This call may be recorded or transcribed.
Whoa. So the AI played back to me saying, "This is going to be recorded." And I was like, whoa.
I love her. She's my little assistant. She does a lot. Like, what's really cool is after this call, she's going to tell me all the things I need to do for you. Like,
Ooh,
you promised Aaron that you would give him the following, blah, blah, blah. So, I really, really like her, but she is a little loud. Oh, it's so nice to
that's
see you.
nice to see you too, Ella. Nice to formally meet you too.
I'm so very excited. I'm really grateful for my background right now because I'm quite literally in the closet, trapped in the closet like R. Kelly. Um, I moved into a new place and the acoustics are frightening. So
Oh
I
no.
I gotta figure it out. So trapped in the closet until I figured that out.
Is
Um,
that not like the epitome of the hustle and just like the entrepreneur grind? Sometimes you
you
gotta be
gotta
in the
make it
closet to get the
work.
podcast. Like,
Yeah, I mean, and I know what it takes to install a studio. My brother is a musician, a rapper, and he spent so much time and money soundproofing his studio at his place, and I'm
oh yeah.
not willing to make that kind of, I mean, we're talking thousands of dollars, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'll be R. Kelly, but it's so very nice to meet you.
Likewise. Likewise.
Um,
I've been looking forward to this. Thank you for reaching out on the Panther Network too to
yeah,
make this happen. What a funny way to connect too.
I love it. I will say that the where this podcast was ideated was it was born from the fact that I have a habit of meeting people in the strangest, most random ways. And so I think that's a perfect way to segue into the three questions I ask every single podcast guest, which
I
are,
love it.
hi, who are you? How do we know each other? And where can people find you online?
Well, okay. Hi, who am I? My name is Aaron Vilaubi. If you want to start from the basics, I suppose, I'm from Downey, California, born and raised just outside of LA City, about 9, 10 miles on the southeast side. It's always been home for me. But more than that, I come from a line of hard workers. I come from blue collar workers. I come from sweat equity being the definition of hard work. And something that I'll even tell in my stories whenever I speak to students or masterminds or companies, whatever, what have you, something that I always talk about is dad being a firefighter for 37 years, very labor intensive, LA City. My mother was a flamenco dancer, 50 plus years. That was her side. So I had a militant parent, I had a very artistic, kind of musical type parent. Make no mistake, the mom oftentimes was harder on me than dad was, but it was always a very like high standard set. There's a standard of excellence that you need to achieve that you want to work for. But something that I'll tell audiences is, you come from great stock. You come from warriors. You come from fighters. You come from people who overcame famine and disease and earthquake, natural, name it. All of that family tree leading up to who you are now. A big part of who I am reflects on everything that poured into the man that you see now. It's the strangers, the teachers, the mentors that gave me their time, their effort, their energy to to believing that I had something to offer the world. They saw potential in me before I even knew what the word potential meant, giving me chances that I didn't deserve. And now at 28 years old, having not obviously nowhere near the wisdom that I hope to work toward, but knowing some things at this point in my life, I'm the culmination of everybody that's given me a chance, that's believed in me before I even knew it. And I owe it, I just feel that I owe it to the world. Like Inky Johnson would say, I owe it to the world to give the world the best version of me. So every time I show up, whether it's a podcast or if it's a classroom or if it's a stage, it doesn't matter. You're going to get the best version of me that I can possibly give you. Up until that moment, that the best iteration I got is who you're going to get every single time.
I love that. I really, really love that. How do we know each other?
From from Chapman University, the Panther Network. But do we know each other from somewhere else?
No. No, so we both, yes, I reached out to you because I
Okay,
saw your
I'm sorry.
profile.
Okay. I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah,
did you just
no.
think of that? I don't know. I was like, please tell me I'm not like,
Yes, we went on a date 8 years
yeah.
ago, and
Ah,
you
you know
no, of
what?
course, no.
That's crazy. Yeah, you know what? That's did I not respond
Although
to that text? That's crazy.
no, my ex-boyfriend's twice your age, so no, I don't go younger. I typically go older. So we're both in the clear there for both of our sakes. No, but I saw your profile we're clearly both, I would say, trailblazers, innovators, whatnot, because there's this brand new program at our alma mater, and it's a mentorship program. I'm
Yeah.
not fully sure what to think of it yet, right? It's just kicking off, but I wanted to see some of the other alumni who are participating. I do, just as you said, right? You're a culmination of the investments that other people have made in you, and I do
Hmm.
believe that to whom much is given, much is expected. And one of my biggest issues with Chapman University was the lack of mentorship and career development while I was there. I
Mm.
can't not be a part of making, like, I'm all about instigating better change. And so
Hmm.
when they're rolling out this program right now for the students, and I wanted to see who else was participating. Nobody from my class so far. Um,
Ah.
but I was like, I saw your profile and it just really struck me. I'm like, I want to get to know this person. I want to learn about him, where he is, and talk a little bit more about what you're doing to create really great change in the world and build communities. So thank you so very much for being open to this.
No, I mean, thank you so much again, Ella, for having me. This is an honor and a privilege to get to meet you, to see you blazing a new trail for your community, and the 2% of Black and African American students at Chapman. I don't know if that's improved or Latino American, like all of them, like all at Chapman, who need a role model. They need something to aim at. I remember when I was a student at the university, and this is no slight to Chapman in that sense, but I remember the statistics. I think were 14% Hispanic Latino at the university, and the first, I think it was like 6 or 7 weeks, I would walk around campus and I'm like, man, where are my people? Like, like I'm fine with this, like it's all good, but like where are my people at? And I was walking through the student union, and I happened to look in like one of the little nooks they had, and there were like 8 students there, and I looked at them. It was like out of a movie. I paused and I was on my way to class. I look at them. They look at me. They're like all 8 of them, just like, and there's like a 3,000s pause of like nothing, no one saying anything. And I go, Latinos? And they're like, yes, come here. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been looking for you. They're like two of them were from my same city, and I'm like, this is crazy. But I like found my people in that moment. But the whole reason I bring that up is because being an example for students that look like you or I, they more examples are needed. I'm a motivational speaker, as you know. 12% identify as Latino. That's it. And as far as I know, I've loved the personal development space. I've loved the motivational speaking space my entire life. I know the speakers by name and by the way they sound and how their message is going to be delivered. I couldn't name one that is Latino or Latina. I couldn't name one. So even though there's 12% statistic, as far as I'm concerned, I'm the only one. I'm the first one. But it will not stop at me. I want to bring in the next generation, and if I can be an example of what's possible, then I'm going to do that as best as I can. In the same way that you're building a new trail for yourself and everyone coming after you.
Oh, well, thank you. I will say a couple things. So I think you're giving Chapman a little too much credit with the 2% Black. I'm pretty sure it was like a tenth of a percent. No, I'm like serious. I think it was like a tenth of a percent.
When I
I think.
graduated, it had gotten to 2%. I'm hopeful that the percentage has changed now. The only reason I know that is because I was a tour guide, and we had to know the breakdown of the percentages. In a Black student union at Chapman, they would walk around with these shirts they made. It was milk with 2% on it, which I thought was like the most like ironic thing that in the world, like because like using milk because milk is white.
Yeah.
But that was the joke, right? That was the play on it. But I remember seeing that, and I was like, yo,
Well,
there,
and
there
I
needs to be an example.
I will say, because you are from Downey, California, which is that was actually my first territory. So my first territory was like, we'll call it South LA.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so South LA, so Downey, and gosh, I forget the name of that other little city, that little city right next to it, but Norwalk, and I
Okay.
so I'm familiar with that area a lot, but I did not join the Black Student Union. First of all, on the note of representation, right? I'll say
Sure.
that I'm being half Black, half Mexican is very interesting because in a lot of ways I am the outlier. Like in a room full of Latinas and Latinos, I'm the outlier because I'm Black and
Hmm.
I'm clearly Black, and then people ask if I'm Dominican, Puerto Rican, whatnot. And then a room full of Black individuals, I stand out because I'm clearly mixed. So whether they think that I'm half white or that I'm something else, right? So in that
Yeah.
regard, I'm an outlier. And one of my apprehensions about joining the Black Student Union was the lack of direction. I was like, look, I'm all for empowering any type of minority, anyone who's disenfranchised. I want to give them a voice. I want to empower them. I want to help them. I want to uplift them. But if all we're going to do is sit and commiserate on our shared experiences and
Yeah.
discourse of things that we don't like, and we're not actually instigating change, and all we're doing is trying to stand out as the minorities, that doesn't appeal to
Yeah.
me. I have to go. So I think I went to one or two meetings, and I was like, you guys, I simply asked, I said, what are we doing to recruit more Black students into this organization? Because all we're doing is complaining about the lack of representation, but what are we actively doing to go into local high schools and recruit and appeal to more Black students in Orange County? Oh, nothing? Okay. Well, on that note, I'm gonna, I have to make moves. And I think that can rub people the wrong way sometimes, but I suppose I have a chip on my shoulder because I always say I'm a minority even in my own family, right? My mother and I don't have the same skin color, right? She's not Black and my dad's not Latino. So
Yeah.
I'm the only Black Mexican woman in my family. So I'm a minority no matter what I do, where I go. Like it doesn't matter, but I can't be hung up on that because then I would just
Yep.
feel really low on myself. And moving to Alabama was life-changing, probably in the worst way. Um because I got a real awakening on a lot of the things that I've heard about. I really experienced them and went,
Got it.
wow, people wake up and they really just hate someone for the color of their skin and nothing more. And that was disappointing. And I had to go to therapy and all this stuff. But ultimately I'm like, okay, I don't have the time or the energy to sit here and like cry over the color of my skin. I refuse to
Yeah.
do it because if I do, and let's be real. I've been called the N-word by Latinos. I have been called a lot of words by specifically Black women, right? So I'm not impervious. I feel like I get it from all sides sometimes. And so that's where I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
I don't need to focus on that. People who are rude, whether they're Black, white, brown, yellow, whatever, purple. I know they're like, what are purple people? Whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, ultimately, I would much rather just find people who are like-minded, people who want to
Yep.
move past. And I don't. Again, maybe I would love it. I would love to be in a room full of Black Mexicans. I don't know that's ever going to happen.
You
Like,
you bring up such a phenomenal point. By the way, everything that you've said as far as the mentality and approach that you've taken to like your ethnic heritage and your character that you've developed as just a woman, I'm so much the same. Because for me, like I've been told I'm racially ambiguous. People look at me like, "Are you Moroccan? Are you Iranian?" I go into a shop and someone will speak to me in Farsi, and I'm like, "Look, Farsi Uruni Nistam." Like I literally had to learn how to say I don't speak Farsi because I get mistaken, right? Like I'm Spaniard Mexican. That's my heritage. You want to talk about ancestry? That's a really odd conflict. But growing up, Downey, majority is Latina. Majority of that Latino population is Mexican. It's Cuban. But my mother was a flamenco dancer for 50 years. When she spoke to my sister and I in Spanish, and I'm not fluent, she would speak to us with a Castilian accent. So it wasn't gracias, it was gracias. It wasn't canción, it was canción. So the little bit of Spanish that I would speak, I'd be with friends and they would speak Mexican Spanish, but then I would chime in with my lisp and they would look at me like, what's gracias? What's it'd be like if we were speaking normal English and I just out of nowhere just started dropping Queen's English. It'd be like, what are you doing, right? You think you're better than me? But I talk about this in when I give motivational speaks and talks as well. You get the word coconut, right? You're brown on the outside, you're white on the inside. But they call you that because you're not fluent in Spanish or your accent's bad. But when I was a kid, I was 11 years old, I realized it wasn't just because my Spanish wasn't sharp, wasn't tight. I learned it was because I was doing well in school that I was trying hard in sports and that I wasn't a problem for my teachers, that I was obedient. And kids saw that as like, oh, you're brown on the outside, you're white on the inside. And I'm like, wait, time out. Let me take a step back here. You calling me white on the inside, brown on the outside because I'm not a problem for my teachers, that I'm trying to do my best, that I'm holding myself to a high standard? That's crazy. I didn't know that was reserved for a specific race. I thought that was just me trying to perform to the best of my ability. I was just going off the standard that my parents had encouraged me to pursue my entire life. And the crazy part is that even though they kept calling me coconut, my response every single time was, watch what this coconut does. Every milestone, every achievement that I reached, I did it proudly representing my heritage, whether they accepted me or not. I knew who I was. But it took some doing. Like it wasn't just like an overnight, oh, this is what I'm gonna do. Yeah, it hurts. Like you get denied by your own. It's like, okay, well, if I can't go here, then maybe I'll go here. Have you seen the movie Salina?
Por supuesto.
Claro que sí. Like the scene where they're in the van and they're driving across state, and the dad is going on about how you got to be more Mexican than the Mexicans and more American than the Americans. Like that, the realness of that is it hits home. But everything that I did, I still proudly represented my heritage, saying, you might think that you have to be like being bad in school or getting in trouble makes you more Latino. That's mind boggling to me. I'm going to change the dialogue, even if I have to do it by myself, because I know I can't be the only one being called coconut. There's got to be other coconuts out there, right? So everything that I did was to a certain standard. And for people who believe that there is something holding them down that's outside of their control, I'm not going to pretend like, yeah, like there are certain things in place that make it more difficult. No doubt. There are certain things in place that make it more difficult. But the way I was raised, and maybe this is just my personal opinion, that's no excuse to not try. Like you said, that's no reason to sit around and commiserate and believe that's a productive use of life. No way. As far as I'm concerned, if the challenge is, if I got the short end of the stick, if I started further back behind the starting line, it just makes the victory that much sweeter for me. That's what I'm going to do, because if I don't do it, then who else is going to do it? Like, I didn't start with the worst hand in the world. I didn't start with the best hand in the world. My parents did everything they could for me. I'm a first generation college student. They gave opportunities for me that they didn't have. Fortunately, they had the wherewithal to do that for my sister and I. But I know there's kids who have it as the same or worse. But if I could do it, if I could reach a level of success given my start or the hand that I was dealt, maybe one more kid can do it who has it just a little bit worse than me. Maybe that encourages them to pursue something greater than themselves. Now their example sets the standard for somebody else that I will never meet. It's that domino effect, but it has to start with me, has to start with you. It's that mindset that we hold ourselves to. You talk about that like-minded. The last thing I'll say too, and then I'll pass the mic back to you. I'm rambling. When I was at Chapman, it was no secret there was a demographic. It was skewed towards one direction, Caucasian, white. And when I was a tour guide, I got asked a question by a parent, or a grandmother, point blank, like, okay, what's the breakdown of diversity here? So I went through the list, and they said, oh, like the 2% Black students, they probably all play football. Dead serious. That's what they said to my face. They probably all play football. And I was like, well, man, I don't think that's an entirely fair statement to say. I know that not all of them do. Some of them are my friends, and they don't play on the football team. They're not a part of athletics here. She's making, obviously, assumptions and jump to conclusions. But the story that I told her was, when I was in a fraternity, because I had that opportunity, there was one guy in our pledge class who was 6'1", brown hair, white skin, blue eyes, like good looking guy, nice guy. And from the outside in, you could look at him and say, this guy's had the privilege. He's had the start, the silver spoon, what have you. He's at Chapman, that whole bit. But in getting to know him on a personal level, this guy was homeless off and on up until the third grade. Like his stepdad was abusive and kicked his mom and him out of the house. And he would tell me that from nights, there were nights where they would sleep under bus stops, under park benches, and dig out of trash cans to eat. But just because my skin is darker than his, I've automatically had it worse. I've never known what it's like to sleep under a park bench. Hopefully I never will. I've also never known what it's like to dig out of the trash can out of necessity. I've never known that. So how can I look him in the face and say, you don't know what it's like? I have no ground, no right to say that. So diversity changed in my head the definition from what's the color of your skin to what's the story you have, what's the life experience, right? And how can we level there? there are things that exist for people of color that can make it more difficult, but use that as fuel to make the victory sweeter, because I promise you somebody's had it worse, or somebody needs you to win so that they know they can win the right way. And also, don't cut people off who look different than you. You have no idea what they've been through, even if they're lighter skinned than you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I will tell you this. Chapman, who I love, I was just there last week. They have my book on display in the Argyris Forum and in the Leatherby libraries. And I love Chapman. Shout out to Chapman. I love you guys. I wouldn't be a part of the program if I didn't. But I will tell you, I know it wasn't 2% when I was there. So you and I graduated slightly different years. My
Yeah,
incoming freshman year, Chapman almost lost their WASC accreditation, which is the North American accreditation for all universities, accredited schools, right? They're the accreditation police, if you will. Chapman almost
sure.
lost their accreditation because of the lack of diversity at the school.
Wow.
Finding this out as an incoming freshman who got not just one scholarship, I got several scholarships, right? It really changed some of and I did not put my ethnicity on my applications when I applied for colleges, probably to my detriment, but I was determined for nobody to look at me and say, you got blank because of your skin color, because I
Yeah.
already knew that I'm going to be up against that battle. Even in the corporate world, I have a chip on my shoulder because I don't want people thinking when I enter the room that I'm the diversity hire. I'm going to make it known my expertise and all of these things, and I need to tone that down a lot of the times. And I recognize that that's something I have to work on, because hopefully not everybody's assuming that. But as a younger woman in these boardrooms with older boomers, mostly male, you can't help but wonder if that's what they're thinking. So I'm going to make it quick to establish my authority and say, look, motherfucker, here's where I come from. But I will say that it really changed. I was like, okay, but I was talking to a professor who said, oh, you really only got in because we almost lost our accreditation. That's how I found this out. And I said, well, I didn't mark my ethnicity. And he says, you submitted your photo. Right. And so even then it's like, okay, I didn't mark, I would always put nothing. Again, there's no Black Mexican option. It's always
Yeah, right. Other.
Black or Mexican or other. So I'm just other. I'm just floating in other
Yeah,
land.
right.
Right. Yeah. And so it is this. I'm happy to hear that you hit 2% upon my graduation. I don't know if I'm fully convinced of that. I'm like, okay, maybe there are people who identify as one
Sure,
or the
right.
other. When you know that those type of statistics go into accreditations and credentials, that's where I want to challenge. To the credit of that person who said the comment about the Black students being athletes, I will say that sounds like something my dad would say, because I just had a conversation with someone else about this idea of, like, a lot of times Black men are seen for their values as entertainers, whether that is on the athletic side or on the, like, music, art, entertainment side. And we do see that. The University of Alabama is a perfect example of that. So that person might not have been making a comment necessarily. I don't know, right? You were there, not I.
Yeah, right.
But social commentary on some of the disparities that we see, especially at the D1 level, which Chapman ain't never going to be because that
No.
poor football program is so underfunded. I was complaining about that in undergrad, and I'm still going to complain about it. But, this idea that the value of or the only way out of your situation is through entertainment
Yeah.
doesn't sit well with me. And I think that that's a social commentary that would take us down a whole nother route today. But I love hearing this. I think that what my hope is, and where my parents were on the forefront and some of y'all have not, I'm like, people just need to stop dating within their race. If everyone would just get into an interracial relationship, the racism would the lack of racism would accelerate so quickly, because my mother's family had some strong opinions about my mother winding up with not just a Black man, but a Black police officer. So similar to you, very militant background. My dad was a military officer. My dad was a police officer for LAPD, right? And they had a lot of opinions about that. And let's just say a lot of their opinions changed when I came out super damn cute. right? And so I think that no amount of schooling, education, YouTube videos, anything would have converted my grandmother into the person that she is now, who is
Hmm.
a lot more open-minded about things. Not as open-minded as she could be, but a lot more open-minded about things, because when she sees a Black man on television, she doesn't just see some Black man, she sees her grandson. She
Yeah,
sees her
very nice.
daughter's husband, right? Ex-husband. She sees her granddaughter. This is the type of thing. Now, people don't like when I say this. People don't want to have that conversation. It's like, well, as long as you're still dating within your ethnicity, whatever it is, you're not really instigating the change that you think you are, because ultimately love
Mm.
conquers all. And I think that when we're so focused, now I don't have that, again, find me a Black Mexican man that's not my brother. Like, it doesn't matter who I date, I'm most likely dating outside of my ethnicity in some form.
Yeah, sure.
And so that's where I can probably have that, but I'm like, my parents have been doing the work. Y'all need to get to work on other fronts. Like, you're dating someone who looks like your brother. Congratulations. Also, you look like my brother, by the way. You look a
Do I
lot like
really?
yeah. Yeah.
Probably
So
a handsome guy then.
people don't think people don't think that they like don't realize that we're related or don't think they're related. And I always say, like, he has to point me out. I always say to him, because he'll be like, I'm a Black man. And I'm like, you have to show a picture of me to prove your Blackness. Like, how black is you really? But similar thing, racially ambiguous, confused for like Egyptian or something else. Like, it's
Yeah.
just kind of all over the place. But I think that that's beautiful, because ultimately, like, if we were to really look at the roots of, Iran and Turkey and the Middle East, and you start looking at, why don't we just do DNA? I'm all about this genetic testing for all. Like, then we'll really see
Mhm.
what we are. Like, I'm
Mhm.
all about that, because we're all super mixed and we're getting more mixed. um and so hopefully we can just let go of this conversation, but it's in our nature. The first thing we do when you take two human beings that share the same DNA and they're born on the same day, what is the first thing we do? We decide who was born first, so we make one older than the other, even if it's by a couple minutes, and then we give them different names, and then we spend the rest of their lives trying to find the ways that they're different. Even to people who are virtually in every single way, same fingerprint, same voice, same everything, we're looking to find the difference between them. And I think that that's in our nature, but we have to work harder to focus on, here's where we're the same, and here's where we have control of our destiny. We have a complete say, no matter what. Adversity, boo-hoo. Nothing is easy. If it's easy, everybody's doing it, and if everyone's doing it, it's not profitable. That's what I say. So if you want to make money in this capitalist society, you gotta be ready to do the hard work. And if your setback or adversity was that you were the minority and you had to overcome that, congratulations. You got a taste of adversity at a younger age, so that way you can work harder, faster, stronger in your 30s, while you have other people who are just barely understanding what it's like to feel like a minority in their 30s. And it's like, wow, took you this long? Good luck with that, So I think that that's where I'm just such a believer of, like, okay, I'm so proud of my Latina heritage. Nothing but proud. It's not a setback. It's not anything I had to overcome. It's like, how blessed am I that I have the best food? Like, there's no better food than Mexican food. That's the food of my people. You said you're Spanish Mexican? Is that what you said?
Yeah, Spanish Mexican.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, my family is too, but I don't know what you mean by the conflict.
Conquistadors.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
Okay. Yeah.
you
From
go
back in the
way
day.
back when. Yeah, you go way
Yeah.
back when
Yeah.
it's like, if I feel
Yeah.
bad for some reason I don't acknowledge.
I love telling the story, and I haven't told it on the pod. I haven't really talked about it too much in general, but my mother was born in Mexico. And so I'm like quick to be like, oh, my mother was a Mexican immigrant, when it's convenient to say. But the truth is, my great grandmother's mother was born in California, United States.
Mhm.
And before the United States took back California.
All
So
right, that's where we got some
yeah.
similarities here.
Yeah. So because of that, what happened was the United States takes California, right, from
Yeah.
Mexico, and my family lived in the United States for a hot minute, and they're like, ew, this whole American thing is ghetto. Take us back to Mexico. So then they relocated down south back into Mexico, but my great grandmother was still a citizen, which meant that her daughter was a citizen. And then fast
Mm.
forward, 50 years later, when my mom was 3 years old, when her mother applied for citizenship, it was really easy because all she had to say was, my mom's a citizen. That was it. So a lot of people assume like, oh, it was this hard, arduous battle. And I understand that that is the story of a lot of immigrants, especially Mexican immigrants who come to this country legally. But my grandma's like, it was super easy. Like it was just,
Mm.
I just showed them my mom's papers and then they made me a citizen and made my kids a citizen. So that's the story. And I always say between my mother, the Mexican side, being like such old school Mexican that they were here in, California, when it was still Mexico. And then my dad being of African American descent and coming directly from slaves, like we know his great grandmother was born into slavery. So, between those two, I always say I'm American royalty. I'm like, y'all flew here, okay? My family
You're here first.
grew here, all right? This is called American royalty. We started this shit. That's how I feel. But what do you know what your background is? You said there was a similarity.
Yeah, so the last governor of California, while it was still Mexico, was Pio Pico. So you talk about Pico Boulevard, Pico Rivera, like that whole city's named after him. That's my great grandfather. So like my lineage is back to like a politician of like the territory. And so whenever I tell people, oh, I'm Mexican Spaniard by heritage, they're like, oh, what part of Mexico? Because everybody's like got their state, right? It's like Oaxaca or whatever it may be. I'm like, look, all right, here's a history lesson. Listen, so the US pushed west, and I go to this whole thing, but similar thing with you. It's like, look, we didn't cross the border crossed us. That's the joke we always tell people. It's like, look, we were OG Californian. We were here like way back when. We've been here. Unfortunately, Pio Pico had a little bit of a gambling problem, and when the Guadalupe Hidalgo Treaty was signed, which passed over California to the United States, it was kind of a little bit of a taken advantage / miscommunication where his debts were paid off, but he didn't understand that he was kind of signing over more than he intended. And then they basically said, all right, you can stay or you can go to Mexico. If you stay, you have no governing power. We'll give you this little land, which is now known as the Pio Pico Mansion, which it's a national park. You can go there in California, or you can go to Mexico and you can be left to your own devices. And him and everybody in the family stayed. Like every single person, not one person went south of the border. And so when I tell people like this whole story, I just tell them, I'm original Californian, like Calexico, Mexicali. Like I just tell them that's my heritage. But I relate to that. The OG Californian. This is when we were here.
I really do love that. And it very much shows that you're a motivational speaker. I think that's I think that's super cool. That's my dream job. I want to start speaking more. I'm getting invited to speak more. That's
Love that.
my real dream job is not just motivational speaking. It's speaking to high school students about sexual abstinence because
Mm.
I feel this little rant. I feel like when I was growing up, I went to Catholic school my whole life, right? So they were teaching us abstinence and we're learning about abstinence and all these things. But I'm sitting there in the audience looking at these people who are talking about abstinence and they're all old and ugly. And I'm like, well, of course you don't want us to have sex. Like no one wants to have sex with you. And I'm like, can we make abstinence sexy, you guys? Like, can we? Now I'm starting to get old, so no one really wants, they're going to all think I'm old too. I'm starting to be old and that, but I'm like, can we just show that abstinence is sexy? That's my dream job. Now, who's going to let me talk to their kids? I do not know, but that is my dream job to be like, here's why you should wait. And here's why waiting is cool. And here's why waiting is sexy. But before I do that, since I don't have a psychology or children's psychology or sex, I did my emphasis was in sexuality in undergrad, but I feel like a lot of my education is now antiquated with everything that's going on in today's world. how did you get into motivational speaking? Like, why do you need or want a platform to empower others? Like, I see the merit in it, but what kind of brought you to this point that you are instilling and empowering other people?
Great question. The long end, or the short answer, I'll say. The short answer is it picked me, and I tried to run from it, but every time I tried to, it kept yanking me back. Like that's truthfully, in hindsight, having looked at everything that's led up to this point, I've tried to run from it. Like, I denied it actively. The first time I ever got to do a public address, a motivational speaking-esque activity, I was 15, and I spoke at my middle school. And I spoke about how character counts and being a student athlete and a academician, and how the importance of applying yourself mattered. I was 15, and I spoke for, I think, 12 or 15 minutes. And I like practiced and I rehearsed. And then when the time came, I just like ditched all of that. And I just kind of went from the heart, and it came out so effortlessly. And I loved that feeling, the moment of it. And it was a crowd of like 1,100. It was a big middle school, Griffith's Middle School out here. And I don't, where half the city flocks to for school. And I loved it. And I was like, man, this is really exciting. And then, you get away from it. I'm not thinking about career at 15 years old. I'm trying to get through high school and know what it's like to have a girlfriend and get my license to drive. But as my life progressed, I get my first, white collar job working in a marketing agency. It was great. I do this chapter of my life I call social media and side hustles, where I'm trying to make money on Instagram and trying to rub elbows with guys who look like they got it, which is a bunch of posers, which later I find out because they're just posing in front of Lamborghinis that don't belong to them, flexing fake money or Fucci bags or whatever it is. But I didn't know any better at the time. I was rubbing elbows with them trying to make money, but then later I realized this isn't right. So I step away from that, distance myself from that crowd. But then I say, okay, what was the first thing that I would talk about, whether I was making money or not? What is the first thing I want to talk about? And immediately was inspiration, immediately was motivation. All I wanted to do was combat negativity, having this limited mindset, a fixed mindset. And I'm not immune to it. Like, I still find there are areas in my life where I have more of a fixed mindset, and I limit myself, and I'm working through those as best as I can. But the progress that I've made, I'm trying to be a model for others who maybe are just starting their journey. But it was just motivational speaking. It was content. It was, here's a clip that I came across. Let me share it with my audience. And I did that for 5 years. In fact, there's a sneak peek. I'm going to be posting about that tomorrow. For 5 years, I was posting motivational content. If you go to my profile and you look under like the highlight reels that you can put as permanent on your profile, I think it's mindset is the one. The first post, it's a whole slew of stories. The first one is from like January 2018, but that's just because it was the earliest that it went back. I was talking about this in 2017, but for 5 years, I was talking about motivation and getting up early and discipline and your mindset and what it meant to blaze a new trail and be an example of masculinity and talk about toxic masculinity, positive masculinity, being a good example for other men and the next generation after you. That's all I wanted to talk about. I did that for 5 years. 5 years of which was met with radio silence. 4.5 of which was radio silence, until I connected with the keynote voice and the CEO of Absolute Motivation, which is the team that I'm a part of now. And I told him, hey, look, like at this point in my life, I've gone from a marketing agency to higher education, got a master's in leadership development, went to corporate America consulting, made great money, worked with good people, but hated the work. It just wasn't for me. It's no slight to the company. The company does good work. But I was sitting behind a computer 7.5 hours a day on Excel files that were big enough to damn near crash my computer. I'd like to talk. I like to work with people. And I was sitting behind a computer. It was just not for me. Mentally, spiritually, physically, I was being wrecked. And I would share this with that CEO that I had connected with, which was a cold DM. I sent him a message just saying like, hey, his name is James Dixon. Hello, Mr. Dixon. My name is Aaron. I just want to express my gratitude and thank you for the message you've put out on this channel. It's done a lot for my life, and I just wanted to acknowledge you for that. He replies back, he follows me back, and over the next 6 months, we would have like 45-minute conversations, hour-long phone call conversations. I don't know why he chose to pour into me or give me that time. I knew he was a busy guy, but little did I know later on, he was scouting me. He was evaluating my message because I told him, I think this motivational speaking thing is for me. I've been putting out my profile. I can't get away from it. I try to justify it like, oh, I need to get this job or I need to go in this direction. And it was hard for me to really convince myself that I needed to stop doing it. I just kept coming back to it. And he kept pouring into me. We talked about faith in life and career and work. And it got to a point where he says, I think this is what you got to do. Come to this event. It's in Carlsbad. It's on Wednesday to Friday. I think you should come. You should meet the people that I know, and we should meet in person. I'm like, amazing. Things at work weren't going great. I was on a performance plan. It was an 8-week thing. I was crushing it for 6 weeks and then lost all my momentum in the last 2 weeks. And because I was under a microscope, made a couple of 2 small mistakes, none of which a client saw, but it was enough to say, hey, we can't sign you off on this performance review. So I got fired on a Monday. I was at the event on a Wednesday, and on Friday, James Dixon offered me a spot to be a part of the motivational speaking team. And I'm like, this happened. Not immediately. It wasn't immediate, but it was eventual. It's not immediately, but eventually. It all happened like very quickly. But motivational speaking is the most fulfilling work I've ever done. It's entrepreneurial. Make no mistake about it. It's not nearly as glamorous as what people, as I'm sure you know, you can relate. It's not nearly as glamorous as social media loves to make it out to be. But damn it, if it's not the most fulfilling work that I have ever done. I get to I share my story. I try to leave people, places, and things better than I found them in the hopes that it makes them better people in the world, that they can impact people that I will never see. But that's the point. I don't care if they forget my name. I want to leave something that outlasts me. I want to live my life in such a way that when people meet my kids, they say, oh, that was your dad? That's your last name? You're good. That's fine with me. It's not about me. It's about people that I serve. And if I stay quiet, it's spiritually criminal. I had a chance to speak at Southwestern Community College in Chula Vista. Amazing group of kids. Loved them. Kids were coming up to me after saying, Aaron, I've never had dreams. Like I've never had a desire to like go after anything because it just wasn't what we talked about. And I'm like, man, this kid's 18 years old. Among several things that they've already been through. And I'm like, man, what else are they missing out on? So I would have never had that interaction. I would have never hopefully sparked something in this young man's mind if I didn't decide to be a speaker. It's worth it for me. It's a tough road, but I have to do this. And if it changes one person's life and that's all I do, then that's fine with me.
I love that. That's beautiful. That's amazing. I mean, it makes sense, right? You're a beautiful speaker. It shows. And I need to check out more of your stuff on Instagram so I can wake up with your motivation because this is going to sound really silly, but
Totally
who and what motivates someone who's motivating others? Like, how do you
fine.
motivate yourself? And I know that sounds silly, but I don't care what it is, okay? Because I've worked with celebrities and been around famous people and stuff like that. And I don't care what it is in the human experience. Everything loses its luster. It does. And any habit we have gets old. It's just in our nature. We're constantly evolving. And so I think that when you're a doctor or medicine, right? Like some of that loses its luster and you're like, I don't really need to do that, or you fall off the wagon. How do you keep yourself motivated when you already know the basics of what it takes to be motivated?
Excellent question. So this is kind of a two-pronged answer. Nurture and nature, sure, right? The first part is I had a good example for my folks to say, be disciplined, be your best self, set a high standard for what you want to achieve. And that played a big part. That played a big part into how I lived my life. But it got to a point where I said, okay, I've done as much as I can on my own. I want to learn about this. I want to actually learn what's going on with motivational type people, disciplined people, because I know I'm not the best. And there are best out there, and I want to learn from them. So I applied myself to an organization called the Flow Research Collective. They're based out of Santa Monica, Venice Beach, California. They are a leading neuroscience and peak performance research and training organization. Phenomenal group of people. I studied under them. I worked for them. Funny enough, I got a job with them because I couldn't afford their training program. But as a contracted employee, I would have access to their training. So I learned the material, I sold it, and then made enough money to actually buy it later when it was time for me to part ways, and I could no longer uphold my promises as a side hustle, right? Because I had a full-time job at the same time. So I learned the academic side. So there are strategies to, setting up a routine and disciplines and understanding the literal neuroscience of motivation, setting myself up so that I can continue behaviors that will encourage results, encourage moving forward. So there's the academic side of that. But on the more intrinsic side, for me, truly what motivates me is one, my faith foundation. I give all the credit to God, Jesus. I am not doing this without God, period. Like, and I know that might be a hot take. Some people are like, oh, this, believe me, trust me, you can try to do it without God. Tell me how that's going for you. Life gets easier when you get him involved. I'm telling you, he does. That's what I will say. The second part too is, for me, so deeply to my core, I want to be a great father one day. I don't have kids now. I don't have to have kids tomorrow, and I don't have to have kids in 9 months. But when that day comes, I want to be the best that I can possibly be for that little boy, that little girl. I want them to know me. I want to be present. I want to be somebody they can go to for information. I want to be somebody that has set the table for them when they're older in life. I want to live my life as best as I can so that when my kids come into the world, I know that they have at least one good example to follow. I'm going to be imperfect, but damn it if I'm not going to try to be the best that I can be for them. And if it's not my kids, maybe it's someone else's kids who never had a male role model. Maybe it's other Latino students at the school whose sports and arts and music programs got cut, and now they need something else to aspire to. I had a chance to play at the Urban Youth Academy in Compton for 7 years. Inner city baseball program funded by MLB. The intention was to get these kids off the streets doing something productive with their lives. There was sports, it was nutrition, it was after school tutoring. Seeing what that did for some of my teammates, I want to be that for others who are in that same part of their life, that same chapter of their life. I can't live this life just for me. It's about everybody that I serve. Like I mentioned before, I don't care if my first name gets forgotten. It's about my last name. And for anybody who's listening, if you're tuning into your podcast, if you're not proud of your last name, be the first to change it. What's stopping you? Maybe your role is flipping the script on it. Maybe your role is to look at the pain that you've been given, like you talked about pain and purpose, right? Like we talk about that. You make purpose out of your pain. That's the way through it. You say, I went through it not because I was tortured with it, but you were given that amount of pain because you were strong enough to endure it. And now that you've gotten through it, you got to reach back and pull the next one through. Like when I was at my lowest, darkest point, I was never like a depressed kid. If you look at my baby pictures, I'm happy. I'm eating dirt. I'm running around like I'm smiling. I'm that kid. But I had hit a point just this last year, I never hit a low so low in my life. It was such a dark place mentally. And it was to the point where I wanted to fall asleep. I didn't want to wake up. And I hadn't gotten to the point where I wanted to do something about it, but I knew with every fiber of my being, if I didn't wake up tomorrow, it'd be fine. I'm fine. Like, why anymore? I didn't stop praying, but I just nothing mattered to me anymore. But I had to scrape the bottom of that pit, because while I was down there, I realized I wasn't the only one. At the time, it felt like I was the only one, but as each day progressed, things got a little bit better. They say find the light at the end of the tunnel. I wasn't even in a tunnel. I was in a valley of darkness. But that's the trick. When you're in a valley of darkness, you don't find the light, you become the light. When I became the light, I would look left. I could see someone standing to my left. I look to my right, I see someone standing to my right. I look down, I could see the path and the way out. But the people to my left and right, they weren't bright enough. They couldn't leave their own selves out. So that was where I came in. I had to pull them through with me. That pain that you have, it's meant for you. It's for you. It's not happening to you, but you have to get through that because somebody else out there needs an example. That's what it's about. It's borrowed time. How well are you going to use that time? That's all I see this as. It's all I can be is a servant. All I can do is use speaking as a tool, use athletics as a tool for something greater. I used to think that I was just athlete. Right? We talk about like the limitations of, oh, you play sports because that's the way out. Some do, but I helped run a professional development program at Chapman for student athletes. the biggest thing that we would preach is you're more than just your jersey. You're more than just your cleats. You're more than just your craft. Everything that you learn on the field, on the court, in the gym can be taken to this place, and this place. You have no idea. If you want to be a coach, that's fine. But there's so much more in store for you than that. You got time management, you got teamwork, you got discipline. You have the ability to withstand rejection. What employer, what recruiter wouldn't want that? Like you have so much more to offer. Don't limit yourself to just athlete. But I had limited myself to athlete until I got injured and it got taken away from me. And it was like, okay, Aaron, God was saying, okay, Aaron, like, you think you're just athlete? You think that's all I made you for? All right, let's see what you do when I take it away. Oh man, okay. I thought I was a hard worker. All right, you got fired. What now? What? I had to build a reputation for showing up first and leaving last because I needed to try to grasp the information that I couldn't. But what happens when hard worker and athlete gets stripped from you, things that you root your identity in? What's left? Where do you go? What else do you have to work with? That's what I had to endure. I had to come up out of that because there are people out there who are going through the same thing. And if I don't make my way through it, then how can I help them? It's a long-winded answer to say that it's not about me. And the second that you make it about you, you're going to get wrapped up in your head. You're going to make selfish, poor decisions. You'll lose sight of the long-term victory.
Amen. I love that you brought up Jesus because I wasn't sure of your faith background, but when you were saying I want people to remember my last name, I have a similar saying. I say, I don't want anyone to remember my name at all. I don't care if they remember Ella or Parlor or anything about me. I just honestly want everyone to remember Jesus. That's all. I don't matter. I don't. It doesn't. And I just want to leave a legacy of Jesus because ultimately every lesson that we need to learn can be found in the Bible. And it's taken me going through some significant hardships and health issues. That's why I wrote this book, High Tolerance, from my bed, from my deathbed, of just kind of going, okay, what is it really all about? Because I'm getting a taste of what the end feels like. I got a really painful taste of what the end is like. And the money in your bank account doesn't matter. What anybody thinks or says about you, positively or negative, doesn't matter. All it's just you and Jesus, and that's it. That's all there is at the end. It's no husband, no wife, no kids. It's you and Jesus. And I think that if you can bring people along with you, but that it took me going to what it seems like my rock bottoms keep getting lower and lower because of my health issues. But it took going to this deep rock bottom to go, you know what? All right, Lord, if you bring me out of this, once I'm done hating you for putting me through this, I'm going to come out of this and make even more changes about, all right, let's get real. Let's help people get real in on their purpose. So I appreciate that you brought up Christ because that is at the crux of everything I do. I pray before every podcast. I prayed every day while writing my book. I've always had a deep faith in Christ, but I'm getting more comfortable speaking about it more publicly. Because I heard it in you, right? You're like, oh, I know it sounds weird. And it's like, gosh, more than ever, we need Jesus. It sounds so corny, but we do. And that's why I say, like, I want to talk about abstinence and I want to make Jesus cool again. I want to make abstinence cool. I don't know if it's working. But that's my hope. That's my hope because I cuss, I drink, I'm wild, I twerk, I do all these things. I don't look like your quote typical Christian, but there has to be a new movement because so many people are lost. And I could talk all day about how to build your business, and I can talk all day about investors, and I can talk about Pantones and colors and branding and marketing and digital and influencers and celebrities and sports teams. But ultimately, blah, 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 blah. At the end of the line, what is your relationship with Jesus? And will this little person in your world who you encountered if I can be that small beacon or light or hope or reminder that it's not about what Ella Parler said, but man, whatever that little light that she had, I need a piece of that light. How was she able to keep bouncing back after hit after hit after hit? It's 100% Jesus. It's not me. It's not me. For whatever reason, he's just using me like a yo-yo to show, see, I keep bringing her back, y'all. Also, I need to know, because I am very much in a loving relationship. I'm so happy. I love my partner. He's an amazing man. I can't help but feel like if I was single, especially if I was single in college, I always liked older men. So you would have been right in my dating range when I was at Chapman. I would have been barking up your tree. But are you single? Are you married? What's your situation? Because I hear you
Not,
talking.
yeah, Dad. Not married. Happily in a relationship. She's an amazing girl.
Okay,
And
we don't want to
she
hear about
was.
her. We don't want to hear about her. Never
What?
mind.
Somebody.
Never mind.
You want me to go on
No,
about it?
no, no,
No,
no.
I'm,
You're
I'm
ruining
sorry.
it. You're ruining it. Hey, guess what? When
I'm
you
sorry.
filed your taxes, did you mark single or married? What'd you mark?
Legally, it was Mark single. Yes.
Okay, nice. Okay, no offense to your girlfriend. No offense to your girlfriend.
No, no, she's good.
You
She's
better
funny.
wife her up. You better wife her up. But I'm saying, like, hearing you talk about wanting to be a father, I'm like, oh,
Nah.
oh, baby. I'm like,
Oh
there are
man.
some girls getting real excited in their seats right now, because it is so hot when a guy talks about being a father and wanting to be a father. I'm telling you, I'm like, little Chapman Ella would have been barking up your tree.
That's
Um,
I
I
appreciate that. Know that I'm from the bottom of my heart. I'm very flattered. That means a lot to me. But it's the truth. That's how I feel.
Oh, no, it's beautiful. It's wonderful. And it's refreshing to hear from a California guy, because Lord, that's the only reason why I moved to Texas. I literally was like, I'm done with all these men. I'm done with SoCal guys. I got to get out of here. I need a guy who wants to
No.
make babies and wants to get married and wants to love Jesus. And I was not finding that in SoCal. So,
Yeah, I don't
I,
blame you for that.
and this mouth. I mean, this mouth is not the most attractive quality for a lot of dudes, because I'll just talk your ear off all day long. But it's literally why I moved to Texas. And so it's refreshing to hear that there is a man of God with family values still out there. It's nice. It's nice to hear. So thank you for giving the ladies hope that there's hope. Okay.
No, but message for the ladies too. They're out there. But I didn't end up in my relationship because I stumbled upon it. I prayed for it. I prayed for it long before it even happened. Like the exact prayer that I prayed was bump all the single life, bump all of that. And I was never like that kind of guy. I was always like in a relationship, you know. I went through a period of single for 5 years and some change, which by the way, I'm a very firm believer that everybody needs to spend some time single in their adult life, because you got to know how you make decisions. If you always are in a relationship with somebody, you don't really know if you like something or how you feel about something, because you're taking into consideration how someone's going to respond to it, or if it's going to hinder or help, or do I actually like this, or am I picking it because somebody else likes it and I want them to like me? You got to know how to make decisions on your own, so that you could call it the self-work, so that you can show up and confidently, definitively say, this is how I feel about a situation, this is why. And if that person has a contrasting viewpoint about something, well, then you have a healthy adult discussion and not have to sling venom at each other. But you got to spend some single time, because you got to know what you are about. The only way you do that is if you go with friends, go try to do a solo trip, do whatever you have to do. But you have to have that single time. I firmly believe that. That being said, when I was in that single period, and I was like, you know what, I would like to find her, whoever her is. I want to find her. So I downloaded Hinge, and I was like, okay, like dating apps. But then I quickly realized I'm not finding her here. Like this is not good for me. This is just a game, and there's always this idea of what's around the next corner. What about the next swipe? Oh, this one's really pretty, but what if the next one's prettier? So to that, get off your dating apps. It's not good. You're not going to find them there. Yes, there's some success stories, but I don't believe in that. It's just not. It's not good for you. It's going to mess you up. But I prayed for her. I prayed for her. I was like, look, God, wherever she is, whoever she is, whatever I'm doing, let me do the work I need to, so that when the time is right, you bring her into my life and I'm ready and she's ready. Whatever work she's got to do, whatever lessons that she needs to learn, let her learn them. Know that I'm praying for her. I don't know her name. I don't know where she's from, but tell her that I'm praying for her. But in the meantime, between me meeting her and where I am now, let me do the work, so that when we do meet, that I'm ready and she's ready. Lo and behold, I meet her, not even in this state, but we happen to be from she's from the city of Orange. And I was like, no, you're not. And I was like, she's like, yeah. I was like, I went to Chapman. I worked there after. I was there for the better part of 10 years of my life. I know that city like the back of my hand. It's crazy. I was like, this is crazy. You tell me we meet in another state and we're driving distance from each other now. What do they say? Coincidence is how God stays anonymous. I'm just
Look,
saying.
look, you're a man in SoCal. You have a plethora. I don't feel bad for any single men out there. Like, yeah, y'all need to get your house in order, because I will say I started praying for my husband when I was 7 years old, and I started praying hard by 12 years old. And I went into high school interviewing these guys going, so what's your 5-year plan? Like, what is your plan for family? And they thought I was crazy. That's why I stayed single. And then I go to Chapman, all you little Chapman chumps. And I'm like, I can't date these men. I can't date these men. Okay. And the prayer that I started praying, and that's literally why I moved to Texas. I'm not kidding. Cause I was just on this hunt. I'm like, okay, Lord, you put this desire in my heart, and my eggs are dropping like flies. And what's happening here? Like, why'd you put this desire in my heart? Why is it not happening? I'm being a good woman. Ugh, and then the prayer that I started praying was, just clear from my path, Lord, whatever it is that is blocking me from my husband, and whatever it may be, pornography, women, whatever, addiction, whatever it may be that be blocking my husband from his path towards me, just please help us clear our path. And when we get together, I promise you, Lord, our marriage will be founded upon the foundation of glorifying you the whole time. Our marriage will be to glorify you, whether it's through our children or through our work or anything. Lord, I promise my marriage will be to glorify you. And unfortunately, dating in SoCal and trying to break that down for a man within the first couple dates, they always ran for the hills. And people would say, why are you single? Why are you single? And I'm like, I can't tell them that. I can't tell people that this is how I'm talking. They're going to be like, yeah, Ella, no wonder you're single. Can you imagine if a little 18-year-old Ella is knocking on your door like, so I need to know, are you ready to glorify the Lord with our
You doing door-to-door
marriage,
sales?
Aaron?
Like, oh man, Ella's dating service is door to door.
Yeah, no, it was rough. And I had matchmakers. I spent thousands of dollars on matchmakers in SoCal too. Thousands. No, I mean,
None of
just
them
running
worked.
dry. It was, I don't know what, I'm like, I'm not the worst out there, Lord. Like, what is, again, the yo-yo, why are you using me? Why are you using me to prove whatever? You're using me and making me a testament. Like, okay, ladies, stay faithful to the Lord. But guess what? He has blessed me with an amazing man, and
Love
he is
that.
godly and wonderful, and he is quite literally, I had a list. I had a list. You're not 34 and single without a damn list. And he quite literally checks every single box. It was
There you
frightening.
go.
It was frightening that I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even want to look at the list because I think he checks every one. But then if he checks every one, then I can't complain about the one that he doesn't have. Damn, like, what am I going to do? And so, the Lord is faithful,
Lord is
real
faithful.
faithful on his
Amen.
timing. And if it's not my boyfriend, because we're still not married, so he, I just know the next one will be
Don't
even better.
even. Don't even. Don't you
No,
get?
I
Don't
hope
you
he
go
is. I
there?
think he is. No, it's not. Hey, it ain't over till the fat lady sings, okay? And until we are in holy matrimony, there are no promises, and that's okay on either side. But this is probably the longest podcast I've had that I'm not going to edit and chop. Like, there have been other podcasts where it was like 4 hours, but we left the last half off. But this is the full, like, I think this is going to be the longest podcast that I've ever published. And I don't think I'm going to edit it at all. Well, maybe that beginning where I messed up
That's
a
so
little
fun.
bit.
Yeah. Hey, it's your show. I'm just here for. I'll follow you lead. Whatever it
Oh,
is, I'm here for it.
okay, so I have to close this out with my favorite question. And I developed a few years ago this Ceph philosophy, and it's pretty simple. It's just this,
Yeah.
it's what I use to do an inventory. I mean, I'm talking a real quick inventory almost every
Mhm.
day of like, how is this serving me? Ceph, Ceph, Ceph. Like, it's constantly on my mind. You'll see it on my Instagram. And the idea is just making sure that we're staying balanced and in alignment. And so this idea of, and it's because of some of the things that I've experienced in my life, that we're not made to be perfect. We're not made to be perfectly balanced. It's just, I don't believe a perfect balance exists until we're on the other side of heaven. But on this side of heaven, we can just constantly strive to be in a good relationship spiritually, and then have emotional, good relationships with other people and emotional balance. And then our financial situation, which is really important and has a deep impact on our emotional and spiritual health. And then, of course, our physical health. And so Seth, spiritual, emotional, financial, physical, I am constantly on the pursuit of a balance within that space. Where do you, within which dimensions do you feel the strongest, and where do you hope to continue to develop more?
It's interesting for me to think about spiritual, emotional, financial, and physical. I think, my entire life, athletics has been a foundation of mine. I got hurt, but I was able to bounce back, and by the grace of God, I was able to. Whole lot of struggle come through that. But physical is something that is become an outlet for me. It's more than just a way to burn calories. It's more than just like aesthetics for me. It's a standard for me. I talk about wanting to be the best father I can possibly be one day. I don't want dad bod. For me, that's not my path. I don't want it. The next one can have that, but I'm working towards something different, and I'm going to set a new standard, right? Physical is going to be part of that. So I like to think that I've been very humbly good on top of my physicality. Spiritual, Lord knows I've made progress. Lord knows I got a long way to go too. Far from perfect, but doing the best that I can. Motivational speaking, right? Nothing, none of this happens without God. What is it? What does it say in Proverbs? Power of life and death are in the tongue. I can speak life, I can speak death. And I want to speak as much life as I possibly can, but I'm not always perfect with it. The next step, emotional, you said? Spiritual, emotional. Not the reason I hesitate on this one is because I'm like, should I answer it this way or not? So you learn what you want to be and what you don't want to be from your folks, right? You learn what you want to be and what you don't want to be. My parents' upbringing was riddled with a lot of challenge, right? Both of them grew up poor. They were both one of 6 kids. For my dad, mom walked out when he was 5, and my mother did have both parents involved in her life, but she had a whole other slew of issues in her household too, which was insane. But my dad was he had 5, there were 5 boys, 1 girl, single father, who battled with alcoholism. So you can imagine the level of like testosterone that permeated within the walls of that house. And he was a firefighter, alpha personalities. He was a captain. He was responsible for a bunch of alphas. That was his trade for 37 years. So by nature of his trade, by nature of his upbringing, my dad was very much kind of like an objective dude. Not a whole lot of room for emotional because he didn't have that motherly side. But my dad and I would bond over like physical labor in the backyard, doing yard work, or I gotta fix the car. Aaron, come over here and do this, which was me just holding the flashlight. He would yell at me for that. Every kid knows about that one. But I would see my dad sometimes struggle with that empathy, that emotional intelligence side. And coming to full circle, you learn what you want to be, what you don't want to be. I learned a lot from the emotional side, as far as how he showed up with my mom sometimes, and they're still married, and I'm so grateful for it. And he's done a lot for this family. We have a roof over our head because of him. There are areas for improvement I think you could make there, and that was kind of firsthand lessons where it says, okay, I need to be more empathetic than the example that I'm seeing. So emotionally, I like to think that I'm in a fair place. But the relationship that I'm in has also shown me that there were some places where I was being extremely selfish. You got to be okay with that too. When you get into a relationship, be okay with getting exposed. It's good for you. Pray about it. Pray for it. It'll only make you a better person. Financial, everyone's got financial goals that they want to hit. There's entrepreneurship, right? I got fired from my job last August. I've been full-time on this entrepreneur thing since August of last year. Thankfully, I've aggressively saved and made good money at consulting so that at times such as this, I had the savings to back it. But I got my first paid speaking gig a few weeks ago. Like, I did all the free work, all the mastermind appearances, all the classroom settings. Like, I got my first paid gig just a few weeks ago. So like financially, yeah, it's slow, but I know that I'm not in a bad place. Like, I have momentum. I have a network and people that are willing to support and help me. Doing something like this is amazing for this journey that I'm on. So financial, yeah, like there's always room for improvement. But that being said, numbers are infinite. And if numbers are infinite and you say money will make you happy, you're never gonna hit it, because numbers never end. So you got to set a standard. So you got to set up what Ramit Sethi, he's I will teach you to be rich. That's his thing. He talks about your rich life. Put a number to it. Say, I want to have this many. This is not financial advice, disclaimer. His advice would say, how much money do you want to spend on travel and nights out? And if you want to spend on clothes or fashion, put a number to it. Now that you have that number, you know what your rich life looks like. And so that goal that I have, that number in my mind, is something I'm working toward. And simultaneously, I want to retire my girlfriend. And it's like, okay, how much do you make a year? That times the next, however many years you're going to work. All right, that number is this many millions. That's my next target. Because if I can make that many millions and I can retire you, then you don't have to work.
I love that. I really, really love that. All of it. That's amazing. Well, thank you. Thank you so very much for coming on. I'm going to be late to the dinner I have tonight because
I'm sorry.
No, what? Do not apologize. I'm
I'm
telling
not sorry.
you. I'm
not
excited.
sorry.
I love it. I love how long we spoke. I think we could talk a lot, and I hope to keep conversations going. I would love to connect again, hear about what you're doing. It's a bummer. I just got back from California. I just got
that's
back.
so funny.
But I really do hope to stay in touch, and I'm really grateful that we connected, Aaron. Thank you for coming on and sharing your time and expertise with me. And what I will make sure to do is that for anybody who wants to reach out to Aaron, anybody who is looking to follow him on Instagram, I'm going to link his Instagram in the show notes. I'm going to put his website in the show notes. And if people want to hire you, they can. If any organization, sales team, mastermind wants to hire you for money, he's not doing any more free gigs, guys.
No more free gigs.
Yeah, you get what I always tell people, you get what you pay for with me. All right. You won't pay me nothing. I'm gonna give you nothing. That's it.
Amen.
All right. But if you're ready to pay him what he's definitely worth, they could just go on your website.
Yeah, you can go on the website. You can see the list of services, the keynote talks that I offer. You can submit an inquiry. That inquiry comes directly to me and my team. Or if you want to DM me on Instagram, that's fine. If you want to slide in the DMs for professional purposes only.
Yeah, don't be sliding into his DMs, ladies. I already heard you panting over his girlfriend who he wants a baby. No, see, these girls in SoCal are no. Ladies. You don't be trying to take what's not yours. If you really need a man that badly, if you're really that desperate, just do what I did and move your ass to Texas. There's like 100 errands here. You don't need to steal someone else's man. So please don't be sliding into his DMs for the wrong reason. But if you're ready to pay him, yeah, because you just said you want to retire your girlfriend, so now the girls are really salivating. No.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm speaking from the heart. But if you have professional purposes only, DM sliding is okay.
All right. Thank you. This has been wonderful.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me, Ella. I'm really glad we connected. Thank you for messaging me on Panther Network. And if there's anything I can do to support you, your business, EP Consulting, please tell me.
Thank you for listening in to Eavesdrop with Ella. If today's episode inspired you, please subscribe, rate, or review Eavesdrop with Ella on your favorite podcast platform. While you're at it, you should also send this episode to a friend so we can connect with more eavesdroppers just like you. If you'd like to be a guest, you can visit ellaparlor.com to learn more. Until next time, this is Ella Parlor reminding you to stay resilient, stay abundant, and above all, stay balanced. Thank you for eavesdropping, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Eavesdrop with Ella, a production of EP Consulting. Some of the products and services mentioned are paid promotions, and any advice should be confirmed with a qualified professional. Opinions and ideas are for entertainment purposes only and belong to EP Consulting. All rights reserved.